Hey kids, it's Mr. Flyer here, hope you're well, and welcome to another edition of Bike News, the monthly look back at what's been going on in the world of motorcycles here in the UK, according to the pages of MCN. So if you're interested in what's been happening in August 2023, stick around and stay tuned. Alright, welcome back to the channel folks. Can you believe August has now gone? And I must first apologise that this edition of Bike News is a little bit later than anticipated. I'll give you the reasons why in parish notices a little bit later. But let's crack on without further ado with the first story from one of 5 papers this month. Right, first thing that's caught my eye here, tests need to change now. Government under pressure to deliver bike training reforms agreed 6 years ago. This is incredible. So I'll read you what it says and then let's have a bit of a chat about it. So key changes to streamline motorcycle licence laws that were agreed by the government a full 6 years ago must be implemented without further delay. Major players in the British industry are demanding. 12 changes to the CBT were approved by the Department for Transport after a 2016 consultation. I remember actually reporting on this, I think in a Bike News, probably back in 2016. The groups are also calling for a change to the convoluted training system and the standards required by motorcycle instructors. If you take the A2 tests at 19, you do the Module 1 and Module 2 tests. If you want to ride a bigger bike, you then have to do the exact same Module 1 test and the same Module 2 test, which is ridiculous. I completely agree. For the changes to the CBT and other areas to be implemented, legislative reform will be needed, but these may be interrupted by a possible 2024 general election. So in other words, nothing's going to change anytime soon. So my view on this, basically, anything that makes it easier to get people into motorcycling is a good thing. Now I remember back to when I did my full test, which was about, well, no, 11, 12 years ago now. I did the DAS thing, direct access, but I had to do the Mod 1, Mod 2, etc. I remember thinking that it's quite difficult to get your bike licence, and it still is. In fact, I failed mine first time round. I failed to see a mini roundabout. I did my test in an area that I wasn't familiar with, and it was a rainy, foggy day. I had my visor open because my visor was steaming up, my glasses were covered in water. Failed to see a mini roundabout, surprise, surprise. Failed. That was the Mod 2. Anyway, I digress, but the point is it was quite difficult to get your bike licence. And I remember thinking, on the one hand it's a good thing because you don't well, the opposite extreme where it's too easy like it used to be, where a guy would just stand on the side of the pavement, hold his hand up when you do an emergency stop, you'd ride around the block and that was it. It's got to be something more than that. But at the same time, if you make it too hard, nobody wants to get into it, and I think we've got into that stage that we've possibly made it too hard. You've got to really want to do it. You've got to be like an enthusiast to actually pass your bike test. It's not something that you do if you just wanted to get some, say, I don't know, cheap transport to get you around to town and into work, which is absolutely what motorcycling can be used for, of course, and we don't see that so much these days, do we? So anything that can be changed would be good as far as I'm concerned, to make it easier for people to get into motorcycling, but not at the you know, not by decreasing the safety aspects. If you go to some countries, like for example I think in the US, the test is still pretty straightforward and you can pass a test at a pretty young age, a relatively simple test compared to ours, and then you can ride any motorcycle. You know, go out and buy yourself a Fireblade. I think that is a recipe for a lot of people in hospital. So I think we've got it kind of right in terms of the safety aspect, but we need to make it somehow easier for youngsters to get into it. The A2 structure thing seems a bit wrong to me. I don't know what the answer is, by the way. I haven't got any answers to this, but it needs a bit of thinking about. But anyway, if these changes were agreed 6 years ago, what the heck has been going on? We need to blooming get the things in. I don't understand why it's so complicated. Anyway, interested to hear your views as ever in the comments below on that one. Right, next story here. Top safety tech for a tantalising price. Now this is the brand CFMoto, which is a brand that comes in for a lot of flack because it's a Chinese brand, and of course we all know about China's political situation, and I'm not commenting on that here, and we all know that there are quite a lot of substandard Chinese manufactured bikes out there as well if you go to the really cheap end of the spectrum. But it has to be said, CFMoto are not one of those brands. These are people that make bikes for some serious players, and they make their own bikes as well under the CFMoto name. And from what I can see, they're getting better and better. I've never actually ridden one myself, so I don't know how they ride, but all I can say is they look flipping good, and the prices are good. Let me read you what it says about this one. CFMoto have announced yet another model to their 800 MT range called the Explore. It weighs 6 kilograms lighter and features a larger 8-inch TFT display with access to 6 riding modes. More surprisingly, the Explore has features radar technology with blind spot detection, lane change assist and rear collision warning. It also has heated grips and seat, cruise control and USB ports. Available from mid-July, the Explore will retail at $11,990. Now, it is quite a lot of money, but compared to other comparable European or Japanese bikes of this sort of spec, that is a bargain. And it looks great. I mean, it's got a sort of, it's kind of a cross between an older Multistrada and a GS, which maybe isn't by accident, but it looks absolutely fantastic, I think. Just on looks alone, if this bike had BMW stamped on the side, or Ducati, I'd be taking this as a serious contender. So, yeah, I think, you know, we ignore Chinese bikes at our peril. We've said this before. It's you know, we've been here before, haven't we, with ignoring Japanese bikes here in the UK back in the 70s, and look what happened there. I think they're getting better and better, and if the quality is there and the price is right, I think they're going to sell. So again, as ever, interested in your comments below, but I understand the political situation. Let's not go there. Quick swig of coffee. Don't forget, you can get TMF merchandise on my website, www.thelistenedandfly.com. I think that's it. I haven't been there for a while, but go and check it out if you've not been there. Right, next story then. Cool A2 license Aprilia inbound. Okay, so small capacity RS440 sports bike spied during testing. Now this looks absolutely fantastic. Looks very much like the RS660. Let's see what MCN have said about it. So much like the larger RS660, the 440 features LED headlamp setup, integrated indicators and styling inspired by the RS V4 superbike. It's got, it says it looks like a mini superbike, but the pegs are set reasonably low with the bars raised, creating a comfy and practical riding position for everyday duties. Whilst an RS440 would make sense in the UK, it could actually be destined for places like India, where smaller capacity affordable models account for far greater market share than here. So yeah, maybe it's one of those bikes that's going to come into one of those mass markets, but it looks good. I like the sound of it. Another story on here, I'm going to talk a bit about the GS this edition. I'm sorry if you're not a GS fan, but of course we've had the news, haven't we, that the new GS, much awaited R1300 GS and R1400 GS are going to be unveiled or revealed this month. I think it's the 28th of September is the date that BMW said they're going to talk about them. I don't know if that's a full reveal, just a teaser or what, but anyway, stay tuned to the channel for more on the GS later in the month, around about the 28th. Anyway, it's a bike that means a lot to me. I'm a massive GS fan. Anyway, John Urry here says the early bird catches the GS. The new R1300 GS means current owners trading in. This always happens with it, particularly with a lot of people buying bikes on PCP that have terms that expire, and they can basically get a new bike without seemingly any financial problem. The kind of owner who has a GS will almost certainly have bought on PCP. Here we go. And you can guarantee a fair few will be looking at upgrading, which means used models will be in dealers by early 2024, and quality ones, as they will be less than 3 years old. I'd pop into my local BMW dealer and have a chat. Most will know which customer wants the new R1300 GS and what they'll be trading in to buy. So get in there first with a bid for the best used one before it even hits the showroom floor. What a great bit of advice. If you're not the sort of person that has to have the latest and greatest, I'll put myself in that category. My GS is 2013 and I'm still pretty happy with it. Well, I'm very happy with it. Then if you want to, you know, get a slightly newer one, then there are going to be some bargains around second hand once the new one's revealed. So yeah, good bit of advice there. And it's got here a 2021 R1250 GS Rally TE for 14,495, so a fair saving, £5 or so over a new bike. So yeah, some bargains to be had, I suspect, coming up. Right, fully loaded. Is it worth splashing the cash for an M model super naked? Now these are again BMWs. This is the BMW S1000R Sport, putting out 162.7 brake horsepower, and the BMW M1000R, the first M model BMW motorcycle, I think, putting out a massive 207 brake horsepower. Both look lovely. I haven't ridden either. All I was going to say here when I looked through this is, in fact, for me, these bikes are just too much for the road. Don't get me wrong, they're lovely bikes. They look good. I'm sure they ride fantastically well, and they are super fast and very exciting. But for me, I can't trust myself. If I had this sort of bike on the road, I would lose my license, because you have to ride, or I'll be tempted to ride everywhere too fast. Which is why my bike of choice, if I just want to go for a ride of an evening, is one of the retros. I love the looks of them, but they've got the right amount of power as far as I'm concerned for the road. You can have fun, but you're not going to be going triple-digit speeds, losing your license, or worse. So both these bikes, to me, don't really appeal, don't really make sense, because I know I'd lose my license if I had one. I do love them, and I like that they exist, But now, not only have you got the S1000R with 162 brake horsepower, but you can get the M version, 207, nuts. And it's only, as tested here, 19,625, whereas the standard bike, without all the trinkets to make it handle and go better, is 18,215, as tested by MCN. Bigger difference if you go for the base model, of course, but once you spec them up to what you'd want, there's not that much difference between the prices. Let's see what the verdict was. Time to be sensible, question mark, possibly. Although incredibly impressive, the sheer ferocity and mind-bending performance the M1000R brings to the table also arrives with some unwelcome traits that make it hard work to ride, often the case with these incredibly high-tech, very powerful bikes. Putting a sensible head on, if you're looking at the whole riding experience, there is no denying buying an S1000R Sport and then treating it to a few select M components delivers a better road bike than a pure M1000R. Of course, if you get pure M1000R, you got the bragging rights down the pub if that's your thing. But MCN are basically saying save your money, get the standard bike and add some trinkets. And I kind of agree with that. But again, as I said, even the standard bike, as far as I'm concerned, too much for the road. Great if you're into track days, fill your boots. And as I say, I'm glad they exist. Anyway, interested in your comments. I suspect my audience is of the profile that probably agrees with me on this one. But let me know if you disagree in particular. I'd like to know. Okay, last story in this first paper. Happy birthday, Sweet 16. Now, this is a bike that means a lot to a lot of us. The Fizzy, or the FS1-E from Yamaha. Do you remember these? This is the bike that initially got me interested in motorcycling because when I was a teenager, when I was about 15, you were able to get one of these once you were 16 and ride a 50cc moped, as we called them in those days. They had pedals, you could pedal them along, and then they would start up and off you go. Now, the very lucky of my friends at school bought these, and they had a great time on them, as did I, knocking around the fields. Not strictly speaking, probably legally, and certainly with no insurance and so on, but we used to ride fizzies around the fields around the back of our house. It was great fun. Alas, my mum and dad wouldn't let me have one. I understand the reasoning, but it did set my biking career back somewhat. It would have started when I was 16 had I been allowed to have one of these. Anyway, what does it say here? 50 years ago, this year, one of the most inspirationally significant and smallest bikes Britain has ever known was born, the Yamaha FS1-E, or the Fizzy, as I knew it. It's the most famous example of the 50cc sports moped. What? That's a sports moped, that's hilarious, isn't it? It didn't go very fast, as you can imagine. So it was a craze of the mid-1970s, which also included Suzuki's AP50 and Honda's SS50, not to mention some glorious European exotica from the likes of Gilera and Pooch. They were very popular in Norfolk, where I lived as well. I probably saw as many Pooches as I did Yamaha Fizzies. Brilliant bikes, all of them, all very similar. But by arriving first in 1973, boasting big bike looks at top speed over 50 miles an hour. Can you imagine that? 50 miles an hour on 50cc. That's pretty impressive. And priced well under £200. It was the Yamaha which was the biggest hit. Can you imagine buying one of these for £200 now? Today there are significant and knowledgeable fizzy collectors seen, and prices of mint restored examples are up to £10,000. So yeah, if you had one of these, it would have been well worth hanging on to, wouldn't it? I'd love to have a go on one now. They just look so light, don't they? It would be just such good fun to ride a fizzy. I'm not sure I want to spend 10,000 quid on one, but I don't know. I mean, they are great looking things, aren't they? Let me know if you used to ride a fizzy. I'm sure there are a lot of viewers out there that certainly did. And let me know if you were allowed to have one, or if, like me, your mum and dad said no. Right, next paper, first story is... It's a raving monster. I've picked this out. This is the Ducati Monster. You may have seen a video I made recently on this. I'll put a link in the corner. I borrowed one of these. It wasn't this particular one. This is the Anniversary Special, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the Monster, the Standard Monster, and the SP, which is the one I recently rode, kind of got under my skin. I don't often ride bikes that you know, I review and then I don't like giving it back. There are only a few of those that happen. One was the Z900 RS, which I've subsequently bought. Another recently was the new Street Triple. Of course, I've been a Street Triple fan ever since I've known about the things. And the Ducati Monster is another one of those bikes, as is the Ducati Street Fighter, the big one, by the way, as well. So if in my dream garage, this would probably feature. Anyway, new version is out. Let me read you what it says. Ducati are kicking off a roster of 2024 new model reveals by celebrating 30 years of the Monster, unveiling a 30-year Anniversario special edition limited to 500 units. It's said to be the lightest machine to ever use the name. It costs £16,095, by the way. This tips the scales at a claimed 184 kilograms. The new Monster Anniversario is claimed to be 4 kilograms lighter than stock and 2 kilograms lighter than the more focused SP, which is the one that I like. The SP, by the way, lovely bike. which didn't need to be any lighter to be fair, is 13,995. So for this, we're paying a considerable uplift for basically a paint job and a few lighter bits. It's distinguished by the Tricolore paint scheme, which does look nice, I have to say, but then the MotoGP inspired paint schemes on the SP don't look bad. There's also an embroidered 30-year logo on the seat and a dedicated animation on the 4.3-inch TFT dash when you switch it on. In the interest of weight reduction, front and rear mudguards are carbon fibre, and there's a lithium battery. That's probably where all the weight savings are. So it does look lovely. I'm sure it's a beautiful bike. I'm not convinced I would spend the extra £3 thereabouts, £2 over the SP for this, but yeah, what a lovely bike anyway. It'd be nice to have a ride on one. Alright, next up, springs can only get better. Now this is one of these technical articles talking about some new suspension. Now let me just read you what it says, then we'll have a little chat, because this might be relevant to the GS unveil that I talked about on the 28th coming this month. So for the first time, a production bike will soon be able to change its suspension's damping, spring rate and ride height, both front and rear, in an instant. BMW call this system SAF Next, and while they're not confirming which bike it will appear on first, they say we'll be able to experience it in the very near future. So that's the R1300 GS then. Yeah, this is very much something that you can bet your bottom dollar, you can put money on, this is going to be in the new GS, which is a welcome addition. The headline feature of SAF Next is its ability to switch between two spring rates almost instantly. No rival system currently alters a shock's spring stiffness. SAF Next also features BMW's first automatic ride height system, which lowers the bike when you are riding slowly to help a rider put their feet down. BMW claimed lowering both ends, reducing the seat height by 30mm, which is not insignificant, takes less than a second, or lifting both ends up again, rear shock first, then the front, takes less than 3 seconds. So that sounds great to me. I've only ridden one other bike that has this feature on it, which is the Harley Davidson Pan America, and that review is coming later this month. I'll tell you about it in parish notices exactly when it's coming in a minute. But and I loved it on the Pan America. It really works well. I never caught it out. And if you're a shorty like me, or you're just somebody that gets a great deal of confidence by getting your feet properly planted on the deck with a big bike, this will really help. So I think with BMW adding this, and I'm guessing radar, cruise, blind spot monitoring, those two things alone potentially would make me upgrade to the new bike. Have to see what it looks like though, of course, and we'll, by next month's bike news, we'll know exactly what it looks like. I'm hoping they don't spoil the looks. The spy shots we've seen so far make it look a bit funny at the front end with the lights and the radar. I hope they've got that sorted out and they aren't going to ruin the rugged, well, I think are quite good looks of the GS. Anyway, more on that later in the month. But it looks like this is coming for the GS as one of the new features, so great news on that. Right, next. Stars of the 70s, these Guzzi and Kawasaki retros look spot on, but which really delivers. So these are the Kawasaki Z650RS and the Moto Guzzi V7 Special Edition. I've not ridden the Z650RS, I love the looks of it, particularly in the green and gold. You can never go wrong with a green bike with gold wheels, believe you me. But the Moto Guzzi I have ridden, maybe not in this precise form, but most recently Mrs. Fly had to go on the back of one of these when we did that Tuscany tour with Tuscany Motorcycle Tours. I don't know if you've seen that video. Check out those if you haven't. Episode 2 I thought was particularly good. Fewer people watched that than episode 1, so if you saw 1 but not 2, go back and watch episode 2 maybe. Anyway, there's only 2 videos in that series, but we really enjoyed our time riding there. Anyway, I digress. Mrs. Fly had to go on the back of one of these Moto Guzzis, and she's no expert on bikes, she will readily admit, but she ended up calling it to me the Moto Gutless, because she just didn't think it went very fast, which I thought was quite interesting. For me, the Moto Guzzi, I'm not a fan of that the layout of the V twin cylinders coming out the sides. I'm not a big fan of it doing it on the GS either, but in a V form it looks kind of even worse to me. But I do love the idea of a retro bike, of course. Not ridden the Z650, I've got the Z900 RS, so I don't know if I'll be disappointed by the twin engine in it, but it looks very similar. It's got the same clocks, same headlight, much of the same styling, and great paint scheme. So for me, without having ridden it, I'll go for the Kawasaki every time. Let's see what MCN said. There is no doubting the Z650 RS is a more accomplished bike than the Guzzi, but despite looking amazing, it fails to pull on your heartstrings in quite the same way when you ride it. The Z is a modern bike in disguise. The Guzzi is a classic design brought into the modern era, and as a result has a few rough edges, but it's these rough edges that give it a delightful dose of character that's missing on the Z. Interesting. That sort of character I don't always like, to be honest, in my experience. So for me, just looking at the pictures here, I'd go for the Kawasaki, but of course you'd have to ride them both to make your own mind up. Alright, last story in this paper. Next stop, Silverstone. I've already mentioned I love the new Street Triple. It's GP inspired, but is the Triumph Street Triple Moto 2 edition worth nearly 14 grand? I think it probably is, but getting older one's going to be the issue. I think they're all sold out. I think you'd have to get one second hand, and there ain't going to be many of those about just yet. Let's see what it says here. You'd be forgiven for thinking a Moto 2 edition Street Triple would look like, well, a Moto 2 bike. Yeah, good point. Wishful thinking for those who still lament the demise of the Daytona 675. We'll talk more about that later on in bike news. Think of the Moto 2 edition as a halfway house between the new superb Street Triple 765RS and a race rep. Yeah, it's a lovely looking bike. It's got Öhlins Nix 30 forks and a milled yoke, which does look very nice indeed. Fully adjustable suspension. It's got clip-ons, which is the thing that puts me off slightly, because I think the actual riding position might be a bit compromised. One of the things that I love about the Street Triple is it's got the fun and performance of a super sport bike, but it actually gives it to you in comfort. I think the clip-ons might lose it. Let's see what Neevesy said. Standard 765RS will be easier to live with thanks to its higher bars. Exactly my point. More supple suspension and calmer chassis geometry. Plus, it's 2,500 cheaper, which still makes it the Street Triple to go for. So Neevesy says, effectively, don't bother with this one. Despite its extra cornering prowess, it's still a naked and hard to hang on to at speed, which begs the obvious question: why didn't Triumph go the full Moto 2 hog and fit a fairing? Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? So many of us have been asking for a new Daytona, yet Triumph seemed to resist, saying that they don't think it would sell. But say more on that in a minute. All right, next paper. Let me just touch you, see if you going to overheat. Doesn't feel too warm. I've got my fan going on the camera. Hopefully it'll last for the duration. All right, next paper here. BMW's generation game. Future-looking CE-02 makes its debut at BMW Motorrad days in Berlin. This is a pretty cool-looking electric bike. I'm not a big fan of electric bikes. To me, they only make sense if you're using them in the urban environment, and this is something that I know my mate Chopsy agrees with. I watched his video recently on the Maving RM1, a bike that I reviewed a while back. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link in the corner. It got massive views, actually, if I remember rightly. Mostly because of my leather trousers, I think. But it's a really nice bike to ride, but pretty useless if you're thinking of it as a replacement for a normal motorcycle. It's not the sort of bike you'd go out and blast around the lanes on, because it only does like 45 miles an hour or something. Although I noticed this week a new one's come out, but more on that in next month's bike news, I'm sure. Anyway, that though, very much an old style looking bike. Great in the urban environment. If you live in town and just want to go short distances, it would be brilliant for that, because it's light, easy to ride, looks fantastic. This also looks fantastic, but in a thoroughly modern way. Let's see what MCN say. The outlandish CO2 Electric, it's called the CO2 Electric, the new 125 or 50cc equivalent is aimed at riders as young as 15 in some markets. So it's obviously not going to be a fast bike if it's a 50cc equivalent. BMW's head of marketing, Ralph Rodpeter, told MCN, "We need to get the younger people into our brand. At the moment, we're living from quite old GS riders." Cheeky devil. Well, he's right though. And the R9T. 10 years ago, we managed to get the next generation of riders to the brand, and we are convinced that the CE-02 will help get the next generation into motorcycling. I hope he's right. Of course, it has to be cheap enough, doesn't it? When questioned whether the £7,500 tag is realistic for a young person of 16, he agreed that the price is high. Gotta love the Germans' honesty. But if you like to look at the 125 combustion bikes, they are around €5,000 to €6,000, he says. So we are a little bit above. So I'd say it's way above. And when you look at things like some of the offerings from KTM, which I think we'll get on a bit later, the Duke, for example, is a great little bike. I think I'd probably rather have one of them than one of these. Well, that does look cool, and I'm glad BMW are giving it a try. I wish them success, but it'd be better if it was £3 grand, wouldn't it, or less. Wheels look a bit odd though. They look like the wheels of a car. Anyway, interested in your views on that as ever in the comments below. Right, heated vision. New gadgetry. Who doesn't love a new bit of gadgetry? This thing here is something, it's like a, you know, what they're called, can't remember what they're called, but the things you stick inside your visors, pin locks, that's it, that keeps them from fogging up theoretically. I have them on all my bikes, all my helmets, all my visors, and they do work generally okay, but occasionally they get defeated. Well, now a company's come up with one that is actually heated, so it kind of guarantees that you're free of fog. Let's read what it says here. Space technology and British engineering have combined, I love this, to make fogged visors a thing of the past with the invention of a heated visor insert that promises to keep your vision crystal clear for up to 8 hours. A conductive transparent coating allows electricity to pass across the film and instantly generate heat, which quickly clears any condensation and prevents further misting. The Visin, V-I-S-I-N, Heated visor insert is the brainchild of Jason Elite from West Midlands based Diamond Coatings Limited. The insert is available online at heatedvisor.co.uk with prices starting at, this is a bit salty, £179.95 for a pack containing everything you need to fit and run the system. The visor insert is power pack is charged via a USB power cable, which can be purchased separately. So you have to buy that separately. An additional pack is £134.99. So for me, first off, two things. I like the idea, but one, I don't like the cost. It seems very high priced. Two, the faff factor. This is yet another thing you're going to have to charge up. You already have to charge up your phone to take that with you, don't you? You already have to charge up your comms if you have them at all. Charging up a visor as well, absolute nightmare. And if you own a number of helmets, I wear probably 3 different helmets on a regular basis. I actually own something like 23. But even if I just stick with the 3 that I regularly use because I use different helmets on different bikes, then it's an expensive game, isn't it, to have 3 of these fitted. So for me, it's a thumbs down. I love British companies. I don't want to do them any harm, but I'm interested to see, would you buy this at that price? Do you think it's a good idea? If you're an all-weather rider, again, maybe you're a commuter, you have to use your bike to get to work, or you use your bike for work in all weathers, then yes, this makes sense. If it's for your livelihood, go get it, fill your boots, sounds good. But for the occasional fun rider like me, nah, it's not for me, too much hassle. Again, if you've got one, I'd love to hear from you. Is it too much hassle, or is it okay? I don't want to do this company a disservice. If you find it brilliant, write in the comments below, let me know. Right, next up, cheap and dirty. We discover which affordable adventure really handles the rough stuff. This is the Honda Transalp versus the Suzuki V-Strom 800DE and the Yamaha Tenere 700. Now, I just had the Honda Transalp. We went back to Honda yesterday. Videos coming up on that bike in due course. But I have to say, I was pretty impressed. In line with every other reviewer, I think, of the Transalp, I was pretty impressed with it. Easy bike to live with. Felt quite big for a small capacity bike. Really liked it. Haven't ridden the others. I was going to ride the Suzuki last week, but due to events outside of my control, which I might tell you about in parish notices in a minute, and why bike news is late, I had to cancel that and never got to ride the bike after all. I haven't ridden the Tenere 700 yet, but would like to. Let's see what the verdict is from Carl Stevens. There is only one winner, and that's the Tenere 700. It gets great plaudits, this, doesn't it? I'll have to have a word with Yamaha, see if I can have a go maybe. It's still the king on the dirt. Not only does it look like a proper off-road beast, but it feels like one too, with a riding position that begs for green lanes and a chassis and suspension setup that will take heaps of abuse in its stride. If adventure means a long jaunt in the saddle to cover mileage, then the Honda is the best bike for the job, but it doesn't quite translate that success to the gravel. Fair enough. For me personally, I don't really do off-road. I don't mind the odd gravel road, that's fine. But I've got arthritic shoulders, I've got rotator cuff injuries, I've even got a sprained wrist at the moment. Going off-road is not for me. So yeah, as much as I appreciate it, it's very much for some people, it wouldn't make me buy a bike. Off-road prowess is not a thing for me. I'll be interested, because often these bikes talk about on-road and off-road as two things that they do. The GS is a classic case. GS actually means a Gelanderstrasse on-road, off-road. Again, I'll never use my GS off-road. Does it make a big difference for you if a bike has actual off-road capability, or is it the styling that you like? I do like the looks of off-road bikes, and that's partly what partly what attracted me to buy the GS. It looks like a big off-road trailer. I love that. But again, riding off-road just ain't going to happen in my case. Not least because of the price of them. If you drop those bikes, it's going to cost you a few bob. They are capable off-road though, as off-road riders can regularly demonstrate. Anyway, interested in your view, which do you think is the best, and would the off-road capability of the Tenere swing it over the Transalp for you? Again, I'm just interested to get a kind of idea of numbers of how many people is off-road really important for. Alrighty, next up. First story here, roads go from bad to worse. Report slams the state of UK tarmac, but we don't have to take it lying down. The state of roads in the UK has reached an all-time low with an RAC, we don't really need to be told this, do we? The roads are terrible. An RAC report revealing a record number of call-outs caused by potholes. The latest RAC figures show patrols went out more than 8,100 vehicles left stricken by pothole damage between April and June this year. Despite budgets being tight, it's essential to report potholes so they can be bumped into the council's agenda. You can go to the particular council direct via its website, or visit www.gov.uk/report-pothole. If you've got one, you're on a report, and it's a great idea. I mean, the potholes are particularly important for us, aren't they? It's one thing in your car, occasionally you drive over them, you make a funny face, and you think, gosh, has that damaged my tyre or wheel? And you might get a puncture or damage your alloy wheel or something, which is bad enough. But on a bike, of course, some of these are so big they can have you off. So it's not funny. You know, I don't know if you're like me, but if you ride the same roads quite often, I do on my normal lunchtime jaunt, there's a little circuit that I like to ride. I pretty much know the position of every pothole on the road. Having said that, have I ever reported one to the council? No, I haven't. Perhaps I should do that and see actually if it does any good. Let's all get reporting and see if we can get them fixed. Right, next story. Speed Demon beats Guy Martin's record. Now I love the whole speed record thing. I think it attracts characters, and I just love that. So let's read what it says here. Jack Frost, what a great name, has smashed through the 270 miles an hour standing mile barrier in his turbocharged Suzuki Hayabusa, beating ex-TT racer and TV star Guy Martin's course record in the process. The 274.926 mile an hour run at Elvington beats the impressive 270.965 miles an hour mark set recently by Guy Martin himself. Although the 275 mile an hour barrier was not broken, Jack believes there is still more to come from the highly modified 2010 Suzuki, as he had a little speed dip while changing into third. Guy Martin will now be hoping to retake the Elvington speed record on his own Hayabusa, a machine that Frost has helped to prep. Now this is what I love about this, the camaraderie between these high-speed racers. This guy Jack Frost is helping Guy Martin to beat his own record, so it just shows they're in it for the right reasons. I love it. I mean, it's a dangerous game, and occasionally we lose these guys, so I absolutely hope this doesn't happen to these two or anyone else trying it. But they're a great story, and good luck to both of them. Keep doing it. I love a British eccentric, and these are two of them. Right, next. Change into the future. Honda EM1e is a breeze to ride, but will the 28 mile an hour scoot excite city commuters? So this is another electric scooter. Now this is where, as I mentioned before, I think bikes do make sense. Electric bikes make sense in town. I'm not sure 28 miles an hour is enough though. That sounds very low, doesn't it? But it's a cute looking bike. It is from Honda as well, which is a big plus point. It reminds me of the EM1e that I rode a few years ago, which was a fantastic little commuter bike. I think it did more than 28 miles an hour though. I'm not sure what happened to it, but it was cute, and this looks very much similar to it. Again, if I've got space and I remember, I'll put a link to that review of the EM1e. It was a great looking thing. Anyway, let's see what it says here. Honda's new EM1e Electric offers a no-nonsense back to basics slice of urban transport, even if it's only good for 28 miles an hour. The EM1's three-phase brushless motor can be found on the right side of the rear wheel and lays down a whopping 2.3 brake horsepower. It's very similar actually to my e-bikes. They have a brushless motor on the back, and it looks very similar to this. And they unrestricted would do a similar sort of speed. Not that I'm recommended you unrestrict your e-bike. So it says here torque is 66.4 foot-pound, which sounds like a lot for a 95 kilogram scoot. The motor and battery deliver typical Honda refinement, and there's zero noise, of course, it being an electric bike. I fear the EM1e would be seriously outgunned should you ever venture onto an outer city ring road or beyond, and that's the issue, of course. Even if you're a city rider, occasionally you do get onto faster, busier roads, and this being small and slow, you might feel a little bit exposed. And then there's the charging. Run it flat and it will take 6 hours to fully power up. So verdict, unless you live in the heart of a big city smothered in speed cameras, this is true, there's a lot of 20 mile an hour speed cameras coming around now, so suddenly 28 miles an hour seems fine. But unless you live there, the EM1e won't replace your petrol bike just yet. Price is TBC, by the way. Looks cute, a bit slow for my liking, but I like the idea. Alright, that's that. Last paper before we get on to parish notices. 5 stories I picked out here. Lightweight hooligans, KTM add a touch of exotica to the A2 class with a fully redesigned 390 Duke. Now I'm often critical of the way KTMs look, but I do love particularly the small KTMs, and the 390 is a great bike. I haven't ridden one for a while now, but they're bringing out a new revised version, and it looks fantastic in my eyes at least. It says here, KTM have kicked off their 2024 new model reveals with a ground-up redesign of the 390 Duke and 125 Duke, featuring new engines, chassis parts, electronics, and a styling refresh. At the thumping heart of the new machines is a 398.7 motor, up from 373cc, meeting more stringent Euro 5 plus regulations. The bike is completely new. Almost none of the parts that we used to use in the previous generation are in the new generation of bike, said KTM. There's also a new 2-piece chassis, steel trellis, mainframe and aluminium subframe. At the rear of the bike, the swing arm is new. Shorter riders will be thankful for the lower 820mm seat height, down from 830. Further adding new riders is a full suite of electronics, which include cornering, ABS, traction control, plus multiple riding modes. Hasn't got the price here yet, but yeah, it sounds like improvement all round, doesn't it, on an already great bike. So yeah, that's one bike I would like to borrow from KTM, maybe next year when they've got them on the press fleet. Looks an absolute hoot. Alright, next Return of the Daytona. I mentioned earlier, didn't I, that everybody keeps calling for a Daytona. Well, it turns out it might be that Triumph are about to do just yet, because some spy shots have been seen. Spy shots reveal all new Triumph Daytona 660 is on the way. Triumph are working on a new sports bike spun from the Triumph 660 Naked, designed to take on Yamaha's big-selling R7, Aprilia's RS 660 and Honda's CBR 650R, revealed in spy pictures snatched earlier this month in Spain. Likely to be called the Daytona, the traditional name for the Hinckley firm's sports bikes, although the Sports Tourer Sprint tag is also possible. The new Sportster features a full sports fairing with overtones of the old Daytona 675, new side panels and seat, plus a new tank. That said, it's also apparent from posture of the test rider that the riding position is on the mild side of sporty. It wouldn't surprise me if they called this a sprint. And why not? I mean, I think a sort of a sport touring bike in this capacity would be absolutely perfect. Nice and light, easy to live with, easy to move around. It looks fantastic, and it's not too hideous of a riding position. It certainly appeals to an older rider like me, who's finding sports bikes more and more uncomfortable. Price-wise, we'd expect it to be close to the 8945 Tiger Sport 660, or around the same as the 8910 R7 and 8499 CBR from Honda. So it's around about the 8.5 grandish, we can imagine. It looks cool. I think it's going to be great. No idea when it's going to come out, but this is one bike I'm very, very much looking forward to riding. I imagine it's going to be a year or two off yet though, but yeah, it looks fab. Would you rather see the Daytona name stamped on the side of this, or the Sprint name? Maybe they'll do this and then they'll bring out a bigger Sprint again, and we'll have two in a sport touring range. That would suit me. Alright, next, Bike of the Year. Okay, yeah, let's finish off this month's bike news then. MCN every year do their Bike of the Year awards, and they come up with what they think the best new bikes are in different categories. So just a few that caught my eye here. So their overall Bike of the Year is the Triumph Street Triple RS. I mean, it is a lovely bike. I rode this earlier in the year. We talked about it earlier. I love a Street Triple. I can't disagree with this as a Bike of the Year. It's a fantastic thing. Triumph have really done well on this. So yeah, thumbs up from me on the Bike of the Year from MCN. I wholeheartedly concur. Great news. Next one I've picked out here. This is the winner of the Retro Bike of the Year, the BSA Gold Star. Again, rode this only briefly actually so far. I'm looking forward to maybe getting a ride on one of these again. But I haven't seen much more about this since they launched it. I haven't seen them in dealers. I'm not sure where my local dealer is, but it was lovely in the brief ride I had on it. I really enjoyed it, and this has been awarded, as I say, the Retro Bike of the Year. Don't know what won it last year, because I would argue actually the Royal Enfield Classic 350 I actually preferred, but I think that might have been out last year. But a worthy winner anyway. I do like the Gold Star for sure. And then the other one that I want to point out here, this is the Tourer of the Year, and they're calling the R1250 RT the Tourer of the Year. Again, I don't know if that's because it's been updated this year, because for me the best Tourer, and I'm biased here, is the Honda Goldwing without doubt, but there's been no changes this year. In fact, nothing really significant since about 2021, I think, on the Goldwing. And the RT is a brilliant, brilliant bike. I rode this when we did that Tuscany tour that I mentioned earlier, and it's a lovely, lovely thing to ride. There's no doubt about it. Again, I can't argue with it. Pricing wise, comfort wise, ride wise, it's a really lovely bike. So once again, it wins. The RT wins the Touring Bike of the Year a lot. No different this year. It's been you know, it's won it again and again so many times. So excellent. Anyway, so there we go. So that's it for the paper review this month. So, a couple of things I wanted to tell you about, and a quick whiz through what's coming up on the channel this month. First thing is, eagle-eyed ones amongst you may have noticed that I've got a brand new sponsor on the channel that started in the last month. That's BLine. Now, this is a company that makes those little tiny nav devices that hook up with your phone. You put them on the handlebar and they basically point an arrow as to where you need to go. I did a review on one of these ages ago. Again, if I've got slots enough to do it, I'll put a link in the corner to my video reviewing the BLine, which I did a few years back, because I've actually been using these for a few years. So I'm absolutely thrilled that BLine have come on board. They came to me actually and asked if they could sponsor me, which is fantastic news. It's good when companies do that, isn't it? And I'm absolutely thrilled to say, along with the sponsorship, they're also giving my viewers a 10% off offer. So if you follow the link below and then you go through to the checkout, you'll get 10% off your BLine. What I love about them, and this isn't intended to be a plug, though clearly it sort of is, but the reason why I like them and why I've been using them so much is that it means your phone is protected away. You're not going to be subject to any vibration. I know there are some vibration damping solutions out there, but I don't trust them. The one that everybody knows about I damaged a phone, not using the vibration damper, but using their standard mount, and it trashed a very expensive iPhone for me. So for me, I'm never mounting my iPhone on the bike again. I'd rather it was tucked away somewhere out the way safe, and the BLine effectively gives you a front into that. Not only that, if you're a fan of retro bikes, as I clearly am, it just looks good on your handlebars. If you've got a lovely retro bike, the last thing you want is a flipping great TFT stuck, effectively, a big TFT stuck on the front. So for me, even though the BLine doesn't give you the full features that a full feature GPS does, or indeed your phone, it gives you enough to get you where you're going, and it looks great. The battery lasts well, it's good pricing and all that, and as I say, 10% off using the links below. So that's BLine. You'll see their logos at the start and end of every one of my videos from now on. Next up, did want to apologise for the delay to this video. I normally try and do bike news as close as I can to the end of the month, so this should have gone up, I think, on Wednesday. It didn't happen because I got caught up in that ATC madness that struck the country last Monday. I was out for what was supposed to be a long weekend. I went to Poland with my family, had a great time. I was supposed to fly home Monday night. The earliest I could actually get home was very early Friday morning. Didn't get home until 3:30 a.m. After a very long, torturous and expensive route to get home. When people tell you that you can claim compensation, you'll get put up in a hotel and all that sort of thing, it may be technically true, but it didn't happen in our case. I'm currently £3,000 out of pocket. Thank you, EasyJet, for cancelling our flight. Anyway, let's throw that in there. So that's why you didn't get a video on Wednesday, because I was stuck basically. So sorry about that. Also, if you're wondering what's going on with my arm, I'm mentioning these things because people often, if I don't tell you, people will put comments asking what's going on. This is a sprained wrist which I sustained on that recent trip I did on the Goldwing to Wales. Didn't make it on the video, unfortunately, because it might have made a good bit of video, but at one point I almost dropped the bike, and in my haste to haul the bike up, I felt my bad shoulder click, which was only 2 days after I'd had a steroid jab, so that wasn't good. And at the same time, my wrist made a popping noise, and both then hurt an awful lot. So I sprained my wrist. I don't think there's any permanent damage, but that was about a month ago, and it still hurts. So that's hence the bandage thing on my wrist. All right, enough of that. I'm not looking for sympathy, by the way. Let me tell you what's coming up on the channel in the next month. First off, next video on the 9th, is that review of the Harley-Davidson Pan America. A very revolutionary bike as far as I'm concerned, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's the first adventure bike that Harley-Davidson have come up with. Also, got a brand new liquid-cooled engine in it, a first for Harley as well, and it has that lowering, raising ride height thing I mentioned earlier, so that's coming up on the 9th, so look out for that. Brand new tour series coming up, starting on the 13th, part 1, it's only a 2-parter. I'm doing my tours, I'm trying a different thing now. I'm making the tours fewer episodes, much shorter, and including much more off-bike footage, so there's as much off-bike as on-bike. This time, this is with my friends from Canary Motorcycle Tours. Actually filmed, I think it was back in May, I think I went there. With the same group, you'll remember some of the faces on this tour as we did the Wales tour on, so it's with our regular riding buddies. You'll enjoy this. The weather was fantastic, and we rode some places that I've never ridden before, so 2 episodes of that coming up in the next month as well. Hope you enjoy that. My tour videos never get great viewerage for some reason compared to bike reviews, but I very much enjoy going on tour. That's what it's all about. So if you haven't watched one of my tour videos for a while, check them out. I'm hoping that they're getting a bit better with the way that I edit them these days. Alright, next up, final ride on the Speedmaster Chrome, together with the lessons I learnt on that bike. That is again another bike that if I had the room and the money, would probably be in my garage. By popular demand, another cruiser type bike actually, Super Meteor 650 from Royal Enfield. Lots of people asked when I can ride that. Well, I have ridden and reviewed that now. That video is coming up as well. There's going to be another classic bike review coming up as well, hopefully. And also there should be, I'm hoping, something about the new GS, as I say, which we should learn more about on the 28th of this month. So I might put out a little bonus video around that time with some thoughts on what the new GS looks like. Next bike news is currently scheduled for the 4th of October, pending anything outside of my control. So around about the beginning of October, we'll do another bike news. All right, that's it for now then. Hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mr. and Fly. Cheerio.